Did you know Eddie Van Halen got paid nothing for his iconic solo on Michael Jackson's Beat It? So how did he die with a $100 million fortune? What were his secret sources of wealth? Let's dive in. Well, the world saw the rock star. The real story of Eddie Van Halen's net worth is a mix of groundbreaking innovation, savvy business deals, and a tragic personal battle that nearly cost him everything. In this video, we're not just throwing numbers around. We'll break down exactly where the $100 million came from album sales and record-breaking tours to his secret patents and insane car collection, and we'll reveal what he ultimately left behind for his son. Wolfgang, stay tuned. 1. From immigrant to rock. How does a young boy who doesn't speak a word of English and faces constant bullying become one of the most celebrated rock musicians in history? This isn't just a rags to riches story, it's a testament to raw, undeniable talent. Edward Ludovic Van Halen was born in Amsterdam on January 26, 1955. At the tender age of 7, his family moved to Pasadena, California, a place that was far from a welcoming paradise. Eddie and his brother Alex were considered outcasts, struggling with a new language and culture. It's hard to imagine the guitar god we know being on the receiving end of such hardship, but it's a crucial part of his story. It's in these moments of adversity that true character is often forged. His first foray into music wasn't even with a guitar. At age 6, he began classical piano lessons. But here's the part they don't always tell you he learned almost entirely by ear. He would watch his teacher's hands and simply copy the movements. A feat of musical intuition that is frankly mind-boggling. This raw talent led him to win first place in piano competitions for several years in a row, performing pieces by Bach and Mozart. Can you imagine the shock of the judges if they knew he wasn't even reading the sheet music? This wasn't just practice, it was a deep, innate understanding of melody and structure. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest talents don't follow the conventional path. He and Alex initially chose opposite instruments, Eddie on drums and Alex on guitar, before a fateful switch put the electric guitar in Eddie's hands, and the world of rock and roll was never the same. In 1974, he co-founded the band Van Halen with his brother Alex on drums, David Lee Roth on vocals, and Michael Anthony on bass. Their 1978 self-titled debut album became one of the most successful debuts in rock history, a seismic event that fundamentally altered the landscape of guitar music. It's a success story so huge, it's easy to forget the small beginnings. The fact that this band, which would go on to sell over 80 million records worldwide, started with two brothers who were once seen as outsiders, is the kind of real-life success story that gives you chills. This wasn't just about making music, it was about creating a new sound and a new identity. But the financial success that came with this global fame is a story in and of itself, a fortune built on much more than just record sales. 2. Building the $100 million fortune. When a rock star passes away, the first thing many people ask is, how much were they worth? But for Eddie Van Halen, the $100 million figure estimated at the time of his death is only the beginning of the story. How do you even begin to accumulate that kind of wealth? It's far more complex than just selling records. The truth is, Eddie was not just a musician, he was a brand, an innovator, and a businessman who built a diversified financial empire. His journey from a kid with a homemade guitar to a $100 million icon is a masterclass in leveraging talent into tangible wealth. It shows an incredible foresight that many artists, sadly, never develop. The most obvious source of his wealth was, of course, the band. Van Halen was a commercial juggernaut, selling over 80 million records worldwide. Their debut album alone sold more than 10 million copies, a staggering number that certifies it as a diamond record. But the real money in music often comes from the road. At their peak, Van Halen could command up to an astonishing $1.5 million for a single performance. Think about that for a moment. That's not just rock star money, that's CEO-level income for a few hours of work. These figures, supported by decades of consistent touring, built the foundational layer of his immense fortune. To me, it highlights the sheer scale of their popularity. They weren't just a band, they were a global phenomenon that people would pay anything to see live. However, relying on just music and touring is a risky game. What truly set Eddie apart was his diversification into business ventures. He was the mind behind his own 5150 Studios, a personal recording space that became legendary in the music industry. He also launched the Wolfgang guitar line, a direct nod to his son and a successful commercial enterprise. This was supplemented by lucrative endorsement deals with giants like Ernie Ball for his own 5150 EVH guitar strings. And PV Electronics? 3. Inventor, racer, and musical genius. What does a rock god do in his spare time for Eddie Van Halen? It was never about just sitting back and enjoying the fruits of his labor. His mind was always working, always tinkering, always pushing boundaries. In fact, he famously called himself always a tinkerer, and this obsessive need to improve things led him to become a legitimate, patented inventor. He held several US patents for his musical innovations, which is an incredible achievement for any musician. Patent number 4656917 was for a musical instrument support system that made his famous two-handed tapping technique possible for everyone. He also held patents for an adjustable string tension control and a unique guitar peghead design, among others. But his most famous invention didn't have a patent number, the Frankenstrat. This was the guitar he built himself by combining parts from Gibson and Fender guitars, creating a unique instrument that could produce his signature brown sound, another of his iconic innovations. In a moment of incredible generosity, he even performed the now legendary guitar solo on Michael Jackson's hit Beat It as a personal favor, accepting no payment for a contribution that shaped pop music forever. Away from the studio, his intensity found other outlets. He was an avid golfer and a member of the Lakeside Golf Club for over 3 decades, often playing with friends like comedian George Lopez. But his real need for speed was satisfied on the racetrack. He regularly participated in track days at Willow Springs Raceway, pushing his cars to speeds of over 160 miles per hour. This wasn't just a casual hobby, it was a serious pursuit that required focus and skill. Much like his music, it speaks to a personality that was always searching for the edge, always looking for that next thrill. His passion for high-performance machines wasn't just confined to the track, though. It also filled his garage, resulting in one of the most envied car collections in the world. 4. Inside his luxury car collection. His European collection was enough to make any car enthusiast weak in the knees. He owned a 2000 Ferrari 550 Maranello, which he used as his track car. It was heavily customized with a roll cage and other racing modifications and was eventually auctioned for a price between $150,000 and $200,000. His preferred track vehicle, however, was his Porsche 911 GT3 RS, a car famous for its racing pedigree, appropriately adorned with 5,150 license plates. Perhaps the most iconic car in his collection was the 1970 Lamborghini Miura S, a wedding gift from his first wife, Valerie Bertinelli. This wasn't just any car. Its revving engine is the actual sound you hear in the intro to the classic Van Halen song Panama, immortalizing the vehicle in rock history. But his heart also belonged to American steel. He had a particular love for custom Chevrolets, owning a collection that included a 1970 Nova powered by a monstrous 650 horsepower LSX engine, a classic 1956 Nomad, and a custom pickup truck. These weren't just restored classics. They were re-engineered to his exacting standards, blending vintage style with modern performance. The collection was rounded out by truly unique vehicles like a 1947 Dodge COE truck, a testament to his eclectic taste? To me, this collection shows that he appreciated both the refined engineering of European sports cars and the raw, untamed power of American muscle. 5. The iconic striped guitar brand. How does a simple geometric pattern become one of the most recognizable symbols in rock and roll history? Eddie Van Halen didn't just have a signature sound, he had a signature look. And it was so powerful that it became a brand in its own right. The red, white, and black striped pattern from his Frankenstrat guitar is a masterstroke of visual branding. As iconic as the Rolling Stones' tongue logo or AC/DC's lightning bolt, it's a perfect example of how an artist's personal style can transcend them and become a cultural touchstone. I believe this visual identity was just as important to Van Halen's success as the music itself. It gave them a look that was instantly recognizable and endlessly cool. In the 1980s, his fashion sense was a reflection of the band's bombastic sound, defined by primary colors and animal prints. But it was the striped pattern that endured. This design became his signature brand, appearing on an endless array of merchandise that continues to sell to this day. Fans could buy t-shirts, hoodies, and even high-top sneakers adorned with the iconic stripes. By putting this pattern on everything, he made his personal creation accessible to everyone. It was a brilliant way to connect with his audience on a visual level, allowing them to literally wear their allegiance to the band. His EVH brand continues to produce apparel featuring this design, a testament to its timeless appeal. What I find interesting is how his personal style evolved over the years. As he got older, he moved away from the flashy rock star look of the 80s and adopted a much more casual approach, famously describing himself as a t-shirt and jeans guy. This shift reveals a man who was perhaps more comfortable in the workshop than on the runway. It suggests that the flashy image of the 80s was part of the performance, while the real Eddie was a more down-to-earth person. 6. A quiet legacy of giving. What does a man who has everything do with his wealth for Eddie Van Halen? It was about quietly giving back, particularly to a cause that was deeply personal to him: music education. While many celebrities are very public about their philanthropy, Eddie's charitable work was often done behind the scenes, without fanfare or press releases. This humility speaks volumes about his character. His most significant philanthropic relationship was with Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, an organization dedicated to keeping music alive in schools by donating instruments to underfunded programs. His support was not a one-time donation, it was a decade-long commitment. In an act of incredible generosity, he donated 75 guitars from his own personal collection to high schools in the Los Angeles area. Can you imagine being a high school student and being handed a guitar that was owned and possibly even played by Eddie Van Halen? The inspirational value of a gift like that is immeasurable. It's a direct investment in the next generation of musicians, a way of passing the torch from one of the all-time greats. His commitment was so profound that it continued even after his passing. In his will, he left a 7-figure bequest to Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, ensuring his support would continue for years to come. This wasn't an afterthought, it was a core part of his final wishes. His charitable spirit also extended to other causes, including support for the Rape Foundation and the Los Angeles Police Memorial Foundation. To me, this quiet generosity is one of the most admirable aspects of his life. He had experienced the transformative power of music firsthand, and he spent years making sure that others could have that same chance. But this quiet, generous man also fought immense personal battles, a dark side of his life that stood in stark contrast to the joy he brought millions. 7. Decades of personal and health battles behind the electrifying stage presence and the seemingly effortless genius. Eddie Van Halen was fighting a series of brutal, lifelong battles. How can someone who appears so invincible in the spotlight be struggling so profoundly in private? this is the tragic and deeply human part of his story. His struggles with addiction and his numerous health issues were not just footnotes, they were central conflicts that shaped much of his adult life. It's a heartbreaking reminder that fame and fortune offer no protection from personal demons. For decades, he navigated a minefield of addiction, professional conflicts, and devastating health diagnoses. His battle with alcoholism was severe and started at a shockingly young age. He began drinking around the age of 12, a habit tragically encouraged by his own father, who suggested it would help calm his stage nerves. This early introduction developed into a devastating, decades-long addiction. After multiple attempts at rehabilitation, he finally achieved sobriety from alcohol in 2008, a monumental achievement. However, his addictive tendencies simply shifted. He became addicted to Klonopin, a drug he said made him catatonic for about a year. He even admitted to abusing steroids near the end of his life, taking them because they made him feel like Superman. His health issues were relentless. He was first diagnosed with tongue cancer in the year 2000 and underwent surgery to remove part of his tongue. He also required a hip replacement due to a degenerative condition that was possibly linked to his years of alcohol abuse. Near the end of his life, he underwent surgery for a brain tumor and sought experimental cancer treatments in Switzerland, on top of his health and addiction issues. His professional life was often filled with conflict, including well-documented tensions with singers David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar, and the controversial treatment of bassist Michael Anthony. 8. A legacy that revolutionized rock. How do you measure the impact of an artist like Eddie Van Halen? You can count the records sold or the money made. But his true legacy is something far more profound. He wasn't just a rock star. He was a revolutionary who completely reinvented the way the guitar was played and perceived. His influence is so immense that it's hard to imagine what modern rock music would sound like without him. He was a force of nature who raised the technical standards for an entire generation of musicians and inspired countless others to pick up a guitar. The accolades speak for themselves. Rolling Stone magazine, a Bible for music journalism, ranked him as the 8th greatest guitarist of all time. To be ranked in the top 10 by such a prestigious publication is an incredible honor. But Guitar World went even further, naming him the single greatest guitarist of all time. To be considered the absolute best in your field by your peers and experts is the ultimate validation of a lifetime of work. His band, Van Halen, was rightfully inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2007, solidifying their place in the pantheon of music legends. Even the high art world took notice, with New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art featuring his iconic Frankenstrat guitar in their rock and roll exhibit. Ultimately, his legacy lives on through the countless guitarists he inspired, from legends like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai to the millions of kids who heard Eruption for the first time and felt a spark. His 1978 solo on that track was a watershed moment that changed everything. A 2-minute explosion of creativity that redefined the possibilities of the instrument. His legacy also continues through his son, Wolfgang Van Halen, a talented musician in his own right who carries on his father's musical and charitable spirit with grace and integrity. So, Eddie's legacy isn't just the music. It's his relentless innovation and business mind that built his $100 million empire. His story proves that true genius finds a way to create value far beyond the stage. If you are fascinated by the story of Eddie Van Halen's net worth, please hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which music legend's fortune we should explore next. Remember, applying just one insight from today's video on Eddie Van Halen's net worth could make a real difference. Let me know what you'd love to learn next.